Hello Archetype Builders. For this Christmas episode, we will be talking about our first homebrew episode. So that's stuff I've homebrewed for my games that I hope will be useful to you guys when you run your holiday-themed one-shots and campaigns. And this is in fact a holiday one-shot that I ran last year, 2022. I ran a sequel this year, but we will have to wait, I guess, another year to talk about that. So the premise of this game set in 2022 was Elon Musk buying Twitter. And I think the popular sentiment at the time, and I think this has proven to be true over time, is that he kind of gutted it and took everything out that made Twitter special and kind of burned the company to the ground a little bit. You may or may not agree with this characterization of Elon Musk, but that was the inspiration for this one-shot. So I call this The Grinch Who Bought Christmas. It's a level 5 one-shot suitable for 3 to 6 players. So the players work in Santa's workshop. I gave them a choice of Christmas Elf, which was a reflavoring of the Deep Gnome, and the Reindeer, which is a reflavoring of Centaur. So they had these choices of races, and I told them to choose a character who was an important staff member at Santa's workshop. Someone who had been there a long time and achieved a relatively high rank and was sort of the master of their own domain, which is reflected by their level 5 status. As a side note, I used Theater of Mind for this session, and the reason why was because these were mostly new players. I wanted to prevent shenanigans where they left the factory or flew around the side of it or broke through walls. I wanted to be able to say whatever room they walked into was the room that I intended them to walk into. And I think that kind of control is much more important in one-shots than it is in full campaigns, but for this, I really wanted that. If you were to do a full battle map kind of thing, I would start with level 1 being mostly the workshop floor, level 2 having a couple different boss rooms, and then level 3 on the top floor being the one big chamber. So those should be relatively simple maps to outline and put out for your players if you want to. So as the game starts, I highly recommend you ask each player to describe their ordinary workday at Santa's workshop. I think this is a great source of creativity for players. A lot of us more adult D&D players have a lot of experience doing office work, and so we're very passionate about what a day in the life might look like. And then it also is supposed to build a certain level of attachment. So you want your players to love the current status quo and to fight to defend it. So be positive in the way that you characterize this. When a player says that they make a decision, have all the elves compliment them on their decision, have them get a reward or promotion, have them be the master of their domain and be excelling in their particular space. Once everyone has introduced kind of how they go about their workday, have an announcement come on the loudspeaker. And that announcement is going to be, as many of you are aware, for the last 2 centuries, Christmas has been unprofitable. All these toys, all this work, and we give them away. I have laid out a plan to finally monetize the Christmas brand, and the board of directors have sold me controlling interest in Christmas Corporation for $44 billion. Just think of me as the new Santa, as the old one no longer holds this office and is packing up his things. There are going to be a few changes around here. First of all, we're trimming the fat. Many of you should be receiving your notice of termination via Christmasgram right now. And everyone who got their notice, please report to HR for termination procedure. Just in case we missed you, the following teams are being fired in their entirety. Quality Control Team, just do it right the first time. New Toy Invention Team, we've got plenty. Checking the list twice team, redundant. And of course, our entire delivery team of reindeer and support staff. We will now be partnering with Amazon for delivery. Thank you, and welcome to the new Santa's Factory. Okay, so optionally, but for you, if you've got a bit more time, introduce some snowmen overseers at this point. And kind of have them corralling the elves into doing what the announcement says, having them go up and handing out pink slips and sending elves up to the second floor for termination procedure. This is the part of the one-shot that is the most difficult. You've put on a plot hook. Christmas, as they know it, is under threat from within, and they can either lie down or do something about it. And the hope is that the players, in all their different roles of the factory, come together with the goal of saving Christmas from this new kind of like restructuring. There is the possibility that your players choose to do something wacky, like just leave the factory altogether, or choose to take the new arrangement and just like continue working or something like that. Maybe they've chosen a character who's in a sector that's unaffected. I think it's up to you as a DM to corral these players into what is the central focus, which is, okay, we're gonna go save Christmas from the people who've taken it over. This can be the role that the snowman overseers play. They can be mean, they can be violent, they can be whatever you need them to be to get the players to rise up against these snowmen. I used ice mephits as the base stats for them, so they're very easy to take out, but it's the kind of thing where like as soon as they choose to fight back against the system, that's the path that they've chosen. They're going to have to stick with it. So I think any player who's playing a character who's worked at Santa's Workshop for a while is going to know the layout, which if you do have written out maps, it's a great excuse to just lay those out in front of your players. Both HR and payroll have staircases up to the third floor, which is Santa's personal office. So whether they're going there to confront the Grinch or they're going there to see if Santa is still there and to beg him to save Christmas, whatever the situation might be, the campaign is to get to the third floor of Santa's Workshop and save Christmas. All of those elves who were fired are lined up outside of HR. If your players choose to enter HR, they're going to be confronted with Krampus. I used this stat block for Krampus, which emphasizes his classic switch, which is in all of the legends, his claws to sort of emphasize a more bestial nature, and then it was very important to me that he be able to stuff people into a bag, kind of the anti-Santa, so that he can say, "You're sacked." Other than that, Krampus is a single boss fight, so it's pretty simple to run, and he's got the action economy to sort of keep up with that. I also put in the room, I kind of ran him as an HR person who's like doing a necessary and difficult thing to improve company performance, but also he's got a fire in the corner so he can say like, "You're fired," right? Of elves that he's roasting to eat, right? He is feeding off of this suffering and off of this transition. This is kind of a very ghoulish figure. This is someone that I want the players to go after because he is evil, not just because, he's in their way. The other option is to go down the hall to payroll. This is what my players did when I ran this. And they are going to encounter the new CFO, Ebenezer Scrooge. Now, Scrooge needs to be a very aggressive character. It needs to be someone who is actively attempting to stop the players from proceeding, from getting access to the money of the company, from getting access to a higher office. And in this version of events, Scrooge has harnessed the power of the three ghosts. So the ghost of Christmas past has chains all around his body, and of course he can cast that on another person to restrain them and deal damage. The ghost of Christmas present, the charismatic and wonderful, joyous figure, Wisdom save, and you can be charmed by him, dealing radiant damage to you. And then, of course, the grim and deadly Ghost of Christmas Future. You're going to have to save or be frightened against him. So that's kind of what the ghosts are doing, is they're playing on these different mechanics and dealing small chunks of damage. When they're all defeated, Ebenezer Scrooge comes back, and he's got Cone of Gold, which is just going to be spraying out his gold coins for a very high damage cone maneuver. The goal with this cone is to force a short rest, either through knocking out a player or two, or through just scattering some damage that is so high that the players have to stop afterwards. Whatever your players choose between HR and payroll, they're going to make it to the 3rd floor, where they're going to face off against the Grinch, who's already assumed his new office. I had a couple of different ideas for this. When I was first doing this, I played on the comparisons between Elon Musk and Tony Stark, who is Iron Man, and I had the sleigh kind of Voltron itself into a full body, like Iron Man armor. I think in retrospect, that reference isn't super topical. I would just have him be in Santa's sleigh with kind of like a bubble of Christmas magic protecting him. I'm imagining this is an electric, self-driving sleigh now. It'll have a bunch of abilities around, like crashing into players, being immune to all sorts of damage types, and then most importantly, I think it's going to drop presents. And the presents I improvised at the time. I didn't have any kind of idea about what that was going to be. I think in retrospect, I would use this table to do the presents. Now, the most important part being some presents that deal damage to the sleigh, and other presents give you magical weapons that can deal damage to the sleigh. Now, the players can beat this in either a specific way or an open-ended way. The specific way is you reduce the sleigh to 0 hit points, it gets destroyed, and the Grinch gets laid out on the ground. The more open-ended way is to stop believing in the institution of Santa Claus and of Christmas, in which case the Christmas magic that powers the sleigh falters and makes him vulnerable for your attacks, at which point you can knock out the Grinch. I want to keep both of these player options open to players, but I think if the players have some sort of sense of hey, maybe Christmas wasn't that good to begin with, and maybe we need to do something differently, I want that to be one possible win condition for this combat. Otherwise, the most important part is that the Grinch is nothing without his technology, and he's going to immediately either be easily dispatched or surrender and be easily negotiated with or intimidated. When I ran my one-shot, Santa was in the next room, kind of talking about how he's living it up on his, however many cookies $44 billion makes, and he was kind of happy to let things go to shit. You can run it that however you want to. For me, it was important to show that it wasn't just that the Grinch was evil, but also that there was a certain level of corporate apathy in place already. And my players indeed turned Santa's Workshop into a co-op, right? But that was just the way I chose to run it. I think it would be a very fun one-shot, very seasonal, very holiday-themed for any of your players who are looking for something like that. Hopefully this has been an interesting homebrew video, and more will be coming soon. Happy holidays, guys.